I don't see the here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to wait a few minutes to see if other people join us. Can somebody write in the chat to see if it's working? That would be great. Hi, thanks for joining us. We're going to just wait a couple more minutes to see if anyone else joins us. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes. Thanks for joining us. I'm just trying to figure out how to do this Facebook Live thing, which I don't think I have permission to do, unfortunately. But just so you know, we are going to be recording this session. All right, I think we're going to start. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is June Okada, and I'm the energy coordinator for the Eklutna River Coalition. Tonight we have a presentation by Eric Booton of Trout Unlimited and Marc Lamoreaux of the native village of Eklutna. They're going to be talking about the Eklutna River restoration and dam mitigation. Sorry, is my dog, can you hear my dog barking on the boat real quick? Sorry about that. So thanks for joining us for our speaker series tonight. I am recording this session, just so you know. It will be, I was hoping to stream it live on Facebook, but unfortunately I don't have the permission to do it. So if anyone wants to, we'll be recording this. So if you want to share it, I'll share it out to everybody. And then if you want to share it to anyone who missed this and wanted to make it tonight, that would be great. And it sounds like the chat is not working. I'm not really sure how to fix that, but I'm just gonna keep going. So before I introduce our speakers tonight, I wanted to just talk a little bit about what SRC is working on. We'll be organizing around the Matanuska Electric Association board elections, MEA. Which is our utility co-op here in the Upper Sioux Valley and also in the Mat-Su Valley. So if you pay MEA electric bills, you are an MEA member owner, and that means that you are able to vote for board members every year and also the key bylaw changes. The MEA board makes important decisions, so it's important that you vote if you're a member so that you can engage with your utility co-op and make sure that you know where energy comes from. In 2024, there are going to be two different district seats available. One is in Sisseton East, which is basically the Wasilla area, and The other one is Susitna West, which includes a whole bunch of various diverse communities, including all the way from Port Mackenzie, all the way down in Port Mackenzie to up here in Talkeetna. So the reason why it's important to vote is because we need to vote in responsible board members who will listen to their communities and to the ratepayers, and will speak out against mega projects like the Susitna Dam that can be harmful. So if you want to find out more about the elections or want to be involved in any way, you can email me at june@susitnarivercoalition.org. And I'm going to put that in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that, Eric?
Yeah, we can see
in the chat. Okay. And also, I just wanted to let you know that we have a new petition letter supporting the Renewable Portfolio Standard Bill, or RPS bill, with Cook Inlet's natural gas supply estimated to fall below demand as soon as 2027. Diversifying our local energy generation is super important right now, in order to avoid a dramatic increase in energy bills and also to reduce our carbon emissions. So basically the RPS bill would require the rail belt utilities, which is the road system grid from Homer to Fairbanks, and it includes MEA, to reach a certain percentage of renewable energy generation by certain dates. And by supporting this bill, we can stabilize our fuel prices and bring more jobs to Alaska, and there will also be less pressure to build these damaging projects like the Susitna Dam. So here I'm going to post the link to that as well in the chat in a minute. Let's see. Well, I will find it a little bit later and post it in there. Now I want to introduce our presenters tonight. We have Eric Booton from Trout Unlimited and Marc Lamoreaux of the village of Eklutna. And they're going to be talking about the Eklutna River Restoration Project and dam mitigation process that they're going through right now, with MEA and also with Chugach Electric Association, which is the utility co-op in Anchorage. And I had the pleasure of screening both of their 2 short films recently at some film screenings I hosted, and there was a lot of interest in what's going on right now with the Eklutna Dam. So without further ado, here is, I think Eric is going to speak first.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start us off. Thank you, June, and thank you all for joining us. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and get my screen share going, so hopefully we can pull that off successfully here. And there we are. All right. Once again, thank you all for being here. My name is Eric Booton. I'm the Eklutna Project Manager and Angler Engagement Manager for Trout Unlimited. And we work throughout the country and also the state of Alaska to protect, connect, and restore fish habitat for the benefit of communities and all user groups. Over the past 10 years, I've worked closely with Susitna River Coalition on numerous issues, and very much value their work and the dedication of their members. And fall and summer, I'm pretty much can be reliably found wandering the Susitna watershed myself with my fly rod in hand. Special place in my heart. But I'm joining you all from Anchorage this evening, and we're going to talk about the Eklutna River watershed, the hydroelectric development on the Eklutna River, and the exciting opportunity to restore salmon to the system. So I will go ahead and cover a little bit of the history, a little bit of the mitigation process, and also where we find ourselves now. Marc Lamoreaux from Native Village of Eklutna is going to talk more about the research that Native Village of Eklutna has done on the system, and Marc's been intimately involved in finding out more about this watershed, and also the effort to return salmon. So he's quite knowledgeable, and we'll have more to share. That being said, we're going to go ahead and do back-to-back presentations here. If you have questions, please jot them down, or fire them away in the question and answer feature, and we will get to those at the end. And Marc and I are going to do our best not to talk too long. We're both quite passionate about this and could keep it going on and on. So we'll do our best for you. But let's see, as mentioned, we're going to talk about the Eklutna River. And so this river is 45 miles or so north of Anchorage. So within the Anchorage Bowl, and relevant to the SouthCentral River Coalition audience, this is a river that's been highly impacted by hydroelectric development over the past century. And we look at throughout the world, throughout the Pacific Northwest, and we can see the impacts that hydroelectric projects can have on anadromous fish streams, so wild salmon streams. And this is a prime example of what can happen as a result of hydroelectric development. So the Eklutna River and its wild salmon runs have supported the Eklutna people since time immemorial. But as mentioned, the historic hydroelectric development that's been going on for the last century or so has greatly diminished the river's formerly flourishing salmon runs. The river, and being that much of this development was initiated around a century ago, we don't have very good information as far as what the status of the Eklutna River was before hydroelectric development, but from the oral history of the Eklutna people, we know that it was robust, and their village site is there for a reason. So current status is that only a small amount of the once thriving species of wild salmon return, but only in very small numbers. So as I mentioned, there's a long history of hydroelectric development on the Eklutna River. The first impact was the construction of the lower Eklutna Dam in the late 1920s. This project was built in order to provide electricity for the growing city of Anchorage, and it was built without consultation of the Eklutna people. It was a 60+ foot concrete dam. The location was a mile or so upstream of the river's confluence with Thunderbird Creek. And this project, I like to refer to it as the first blow to wild fish of the Eklutna River. What it did was it blocked the migration of wild salmon and took their watershed, or their salmon stream, and cut it into a very, very small fraction. So very much limited the amount of spawning and rearing habitat that these fish could access. And this dam had struggles from the get-go, being that this is a glacial salmon stream. There's or a glacial river, there's a lot of silt associated with it. And you can see in this photo that that the backside of that dam there, the upstream side, is pretty much filled with sediment. And so the life of this project was relatively short-lived, as the realities of the system bogged it down. And so this dam was built in the 1920s, and I think for many people in the greater Anchorage area, there wasn't a whole lot of familiarity of its existence. Clearly, the Eklutna people knew it was there, but it wasn't until it was identified that this dam was existing on the Eklutna River without creating any electricity, and just kind of blocking fish passage, that it started to get a lot of attention. So this dam was made irrelevant in the 1950s when an upstream hydroelectric project was built, and then this dam was left to just simply block fish habitat. So the idea was brought up to have this dam removed and help open up that upstream habitat, and it was met with a whole lot of interest and a whole lot of spotlight on the Eklutna River, because many people didn't know that right here in our own backyards there was a salmon stream that was so severely impacted. So in 2017 and 2018, the Conservation Fund, Eklutna Inc. and Native Village of Eklutna did the work to have this barrier removed. And here is an aerial photo of the location after that dam removal. So you can see part of the concrete wall of the dam was left there, so that a little bit of this history remained. You can note that there's only a small trickle of water coming down the system. That's because the upstream hydroelectric project diverts all of the water. So this water is sourced from groundwater coming up, or water coming into the system from precipitation downstream of Eklutna Lake. So this was a really exciting moment for the Eklutna people, for the public. It was momentum in restoring the system. But as you can see, while this dam removal opened up about 8.5 miles of upstream habitat for salmon, there wasn't enough water for them to put it to use. And unfortunately, this is still the current status of the upper Eklutna River after the dam removal. There is not water for the fish to be able to fully put it to use. So carrying on, as I mentioned, there was a second hydroelectric project that was built upstream of the lower dam, which is what made it useless and led to it being abandoned. So some of you may be familiar with this diversion dam here. This is part of the Eklutna Hydroelectric project, which is still in operation. This is the diversion dam at the outflow of Eklutna Lake. And so the purpose of this structure is to allow the naturally occurring lake to hold more water, so that the water of Eklutna Lake can be diverted from the system. There is a tunnel that goes through the Twin Peaks area to the Chugach River, which is where the Eklutna Tail Race is, that many might be familiar with. And that is the site of electricity generation for the Eklutna Hydroelectric project, which is owned by Matanuska Electric Association, Chugach Electric Association, and the municipality of Anchorage. As I mentioned, this diversion dam here doesn't release any water downstream. And there is a lot of water in Eklutna Lake, and all of that water gets diverted from it currently, none of that water being provided for fish. 90% of that water goes through the Eklutna Hydroelectric project, generating 3 to 5% of electricity for the Anchorage area. So consuming a significant amount of the water for what is truly a small amount of electricity. The other 10% of that water goes through the AWU system to provide nearly all of Anchorage's drinking water. So a lot of water there. Some of the things you can see with this diversion dam here is, again, no flowing water coming out. And even if there was water for fish to make it up this far, there's no access for them around this barrier to get into Eklutna Lake or the upstream habitat. So while it's disappointing that salmon can't make it to this point, for the past many years, there's been a whole lot of hope. And that's because when this project, which was originally built in the 1950s by the federal government, was sold to the current owners in the 90s. And that sale included a 1991 purchasing agreement, which included an obligation for them to make up for their impact to fish and their wildlife, or make up to their impact to fish and wildlife and their habitat. And we are currently in that period now where the utility companies are legally required to make up for their impact. So this is the opportunity for us to have this system reconnected so that salmon can return throughout the Eklutna River watershed and make a comeback. So a fish-filled future for the Eklutna River is possible, but they need flowing water and fish passage in order to do that. And as we have seen over the past, I guess it's 5 years now since the dam removal, is the public want this and they're excited about it. So this is a photo from the Bucket Brigade that was hosted in 2018 after the removal of the abandoned dam. And this was more than 100 Alaskans who were really excited about this removal and what was possible for the Eklutna. They came out to Eklutna Lake and wanted to highlight that while we have the lower dam removed, and that was a huge win, wanted to also draw into focus that the salmon of the Eklutna still need water. So participants made this line across going from the downstream side of the diversion dam to the upstream side here at Eklutna Lake, which is what's pictured, with a line of buckets, and passed buckets person to person and tossed them into the Eklutna River. It didn't do much in order of returning water to the Eklutna that day, but it demonstrated that residents are excited about this opportunity. And one of the things that was pretty exciting, just a year following the removal of the lower Eklutna Dam, Alaska Department of Fish and Game did find juvenile coho salmon as well as adult coho salmon upstream of the dam site where the dam was removed, including some of them a mile or so upstream. So again, we saw that photo. There was a very minimal amount of water, yet these are resilient fish. So they took that opportunity and they did everything in their power to make it as far up as they could. So the fish are there. They know what to do, and they're doing everything they can to put this system to use. So more water and fish passage, and a whole lot is possible. This is jumping up to 2021. So the mitigation process to make up for the project's impact to fish and wildlife kicked off in 2019. 2021 and 2022 were the 2 years of field studies that were conducted by contractors for the project operators, as well as Native Village of Eklutna and others. And the purposes of these field studies were to gather the information necessary to make an informed decision as to what should be done to make up for the project's impact to fish and wildlife. And one of the required studies was an in-stream flow study, where for the first time since the construction of the Eklutna hydroelectric project, water was intentionally released from the Eklutna Dam. And so that was for 3 weeks. The utility companies released continuous flows. And for many of the Eklutna people and Alaskans, we got the opportunity to see what water looked like in the Eklutna River and what the future is possible. And so the first week of the studies included 150 cubic feet per second of water flowing down the river, which was around a tenth or so of the historic flows. Oh, sorry. But nonetheless, a whole lot more than what is currently there. So the public joined to celebrate, and this is about 150 people who were there to witness a flowing Eklutna River. So this is a little bit downstream of the diversion dam at Eklutna Lake. We can see on the left the before photo with what it typically looks like with zero water, and then on the right 150 cubic feet per second. It's not big, but it sure looks like a salmon stream. And then in last year, in 2022, was the end of the field studies and kind of signaled the transition from gathering the research to considering the ideas of how to make up for the project's impact. And in order to highlight the needs of salmon, the Eklutna River Restoration Coalition had the salmon relay, in which representatives from Eklutna Inc. and Native Village of Eklutna actually relayed 2 salmon from the village site up Eklutna Lake Road and to Eklutna Lake, where they were met with more than 100 members of the public who walked with them down to the diversion dam at Eklutna Lake. From there, similar to the Bucket Brigade, they spanned the distance from the downstream side of the diversion dam to Eklutna Lake and passed the fish person to person from the dry Eklutna riverbed to the lake. The salmon may have been plush salmon, but the message was the same, that we are working together to return water and fish passage to the Eklutna River, and we're dedicated to help make that happen. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this video to play. This is Drayden, a young Eklutna tribal member, and some of his thoughts.
Cool if the salmon come up. It's gonna be cool seeing a bunch of fish that we never seen. Because when me and her growing up coming here, we didn't see a lot of fish. We always hear stories from our elders and stuff. Hearing there used to be a whole bunch of fish in water. But
we want to help with that.
yeah, we want to help restore all that and save fish and stuff.
There we go. Okay. Oh, jump back a slide. Okay. So I did a whole lot of history and background information there. Let's exit out of that. And I know not everyone might be familiar with the Eklutna watershed or the operations of the hydroelectric project. So going to take a quick second to show you a map. So we have Native Village of Eklutna village site, the Glen Highway, which is where many of us probably see the Eklutna River signs, or, you know, if we think the Eklutna River, we're might be thinking about where the Glen Highway crosses it, or many of us probably recreate up at Eklutna Lake. And I think it's important to note that the water flowing under the Glen Highway Bridge, for all intents and purposes, you can consider that to be Thunderbird Creek. So that water is nearly exclusively coming from Thunderbird because no water is released from the Eklutna River. So if we're gonna walk through this map, we have right here was the former location of the lower Eklutna Dam, built in the 20s, made useless in the 50s, and then removed in 2018. And you can really see that impact here. It took this entire system and boiled it down to just this little bit of habitat. Going up the river, right here at this next red circle is the location of the diversion dam for the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project. And again, that diverts all of the water that would flow down the river. And that water goes to the power plant along the Chugach River. And that's about 90% of the water. And the remainder, 10% of that water goes through the AWU system to provide drinking water. So hopefully that helps clarify any of those locations I was talking about. And as I mentioned, we had the field studies from 2020 or 2021 and 2022. 2023 was dedicated to reviewing those studies and having discussions about what the mitigation solutions might be to make up for this project's impact to fish and wildlife. It's been very clear from the Eklutna people that they want to see this river actually restored, with fish having a true opportunity to resettle themselves. And that means having flowing water throughout the river, as well as fish passage into Eklutna Lake. There were a lot of alternatives that were proposed by Native Village of Eklutna, Trout Unlimited, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and others that would have provided adequate flowing water for fish and fish passage, while still making sure that hydroelectric, still making sure that electricity could be developed by the hydro project, as well as ensuring that all of the water was made available for drinking water. However, we are really disappointed that the alternative that was just released by the utility companies last Friday as their preferred alternative does not meet the needs of fish. So this is a quick look at their alternative. So again, there were many alternatives that were proposed, and the operators of the project selected what is certainly the worst of the options for fish. And their alternative would be to have water released into the Eklutna River, not from Eklutna Lake, but from a portal valve attached to the AWU infrastructure. So adding a spigot essentially to our drinking water infrastructure. And this would leave about a mile of the Eklutna River dry. It would only provide about 40 cubic feet per second of water flowing down the river, which is a very minimal amount of water. It would not allow sockeye salmon the opportunity to return. They really need Eklutna Lake in the upstream habitat. However, the benefit for the project operators is that it is the cheapest potential option for them. However, as stated, it doesn't meet the needs of fish, and it is a disappointment to all of the organizations, the Eklutna people, and the thousands of people in the public who want to see a fish-filled Eklutna River. If we're going to have cost be the primary way in which we look at mitigation, there is another potential option that can be inexpensive. And so this alternative that has been proposed, it does still have a large price tag, and that price tag is not going to restore the fishery. But if we're going to think about lower price tag options that could restore the fishery, one of the things that Native Village of Eklutna and others specifically asked for was the analysis of the removal of the dam, which would allow the water to freely flow. And meanwhile, water could still be utilized for drinking water, and during certain months would still be available for hydro or for electricity. So again, a small amount of electricity is generated, and that's something that can easily be made up elsewhere. This is our one opportunity to return salmon to the Eklutna River, and we don't need to rush that. We can take our time and we can come up with the option that's going to work. So again, the draft mitigation alternative that was released by the utility companies last Friday has been met with a lot of disappointment. However, amongst Native Village of Eklutna, Trout Unlimited, and others involved, there's a sincere desire to help ensure that the outcome of this mitigation leads to a fish-filled Eklutna River that the community can be proud of and excited about. So the next steps are, now that the draft alternative is out, there will be attempts to reconcile the differences amongst the parties to come up with a solution that works for everyone. But I know there's a lot of people joining this that are interested in what they can do to help. So here's a little look at what you can do. So I did share in the chat earlier before we began the link to the eklutnariver.org website where you can learn more, but also you can take a second to send an email to decision makers for this mitigation process to voice your support for restoring fish passage and returning water. Over the past many months, these decision makers have been hearing a lot from Alaskans, and we know that they're listening. So your voice will be really important. Also, I'm presuming there's many MEA members here, as well as maybe some Chugach Electric members. So just highlighting that the 13th is the next MEA board meeting. The 22nd is the next Chugach Electric Association board meeting. These are good opportunities to voice your support in front of the board, again, who has been hearing a lot of this. And we really need people's voices between here and the mitigation decision. So another important thing, if you want to go above and beyond right now, is go ahead and put some sort of sticky note on your January calendar or something like that, because at this point it is anticipated that public meetings will be hosted by the utility companies in January, one in Anchorage and one in the Mat-Su, where they will be there to listen to the public. And I think that is all that I have for the moment. So yeah, put your questions in the Q&A feature. We'll get to them. Thanks for listening to me yap. And I'm going to go ahead and pass this shindig over to Mark. Mark,
great presentation, Eric. June, how many minutes do I have left?
It's 6:37, so you can talk for 10 to 15 minutes if you'd like.
Okay. So, all right. Well, yeah, I'm Marc Lamoreaux, land environment director. That's what we call it in El Nino. That's what the elders call the word for environment. Means land and environment. It includes water too. So that's what we call their department. I've been working for a native village of Eklutna, the tribe, for 23 years now, and the restoration of Eklutna River has always been our highest departmental priority, and a very high priority of the tribe as well. So, you know, I won't go in the history of all we've done, but there's been a big push lately, as Eric has been describing, where many more entities are getting interested in both the research and to advise the restoration plan. And so, you know, this remainder of the presentation is mainly about the habitat that would be opened up with fish passage at the lake outlet. So you can see the lake there and its tributaries, which are both really good habitats. So kind of fix that in your mind. You know, the river coming down out of the outlet of the lake is, as Eric has said, is colored in. It's not really flowing like that. It's dry for a few miles down, and then the flow is just real low until you get down to where the old dam was. Probably not suitable for fish passage either, and it's very turbid. As you saw, it's all muddy because just from little feeder creeks and stuff that come down through washes and pick up a lot of mud and sediment. So Eric, maybe you can point out that the Thunderbird Creek Valley comes down and enters the river there, and that really saves our salmon runs. So below Thunderbird Falls and down that stretch of the river, that's where all the remaining salmon are still trying to hold on, and they're dwindling and dwindling. We only counted, we do salmon counts a lot, and we only counted 3 king salmon this year, and you know, these are the largest king salmon in any upper inlet drainage. You know, they barely have water to cover their backs, so it's kind of a tragedy. But anyway, fix the upper part, you know, from the lake on up in your mind, and let's go to the next slide. So I'll just read this. It's a nice picture of spawning habitat in a feeder creek to the West Fork River tributary. And that's what the picture is. But this is our best traditional knowledge. Let's read it. 6 elders now deceased told Elder Maria Coleman that the Eklutna River used to be overflowing with abundant fish before the dams. Now they say we can't. Then they say now we can't even use that river anymore because there's so few fish. elder Lois Munson, who actually just died last week, recalled stories of her family fishing for salmon. I think that's pronounced thick, the generic term, Denina term for all salmon species, at their cabin that was located at the upper end of Eklutna Lake prior to the dams being built. Stories include a fish rack and smoking of salmon in quantities to bring back fish to the village. So that this is some of the best evidence that there were prolific, abundant fish runs up to the lake and above, and that the power companies are trying to deny. They say it's too cold up in those feeder tributary creek rivers and creeks, and the lake is barren. Well, it's barren because it has no more marine derived nutrients from the salmon, and I'll show you another reason. So next slide. Hey, this is a 1944 photo of the lake when it was flowing freely down the river there on the right. Okay, next slide. This shows, the upper right, the lower part of Eklutna Lake, and then there's a perched pond right above the dam, and obviously that is coming from that little feeder creek highlighted on the lower right, and they diverted that creek, so now it fills that little pond and flows back into their lake to generate more power. And of course, you saw the pictures of that dam there on the left, which they've not been releasing any water out of except for when it floods. Okay, next slide. This is just amazing, where they draw down the water 80 feet, so there's this barren ring of gravel all around the lake, and the fish study contractors went ahead and on their own, they were contracted by the utilities to document any spawning habitat around the lake in the feeder creeks, but they documented in this varial zone where this ring of barren gravel around the lake has all these potentially good sockeye spawning beds in it, where there's the proper size gravel and the fresh water seeping out of it. So if there was fish passage and the lake were allowed to cover those beds, we'd have a productive sockeye system, and those are very productive in other lakes around Alaska. So we can assume it would be here too, although they try to deny it. Okay, next slide. And there's this run of landlocked sockeye salmon, called kokanee that hang on, and apparently they caught 30 or picked up 331 spawned out kokanee in the lake just on that year that they were doing the study. And they were, miniature, so they have got eggs, and they're 4.5 to 6.5 inches long, but ADFG biologists tell us that these would grow to normal sockeye size if allowed to develop in the ocean. So that's what we're hoping for. Next slide. These are just, mainly some pictures of the habitat in the tributaries and the feeders to the river tributaries of above Eklutna Lake, like you saw where you saw in the original air photo. And yeah, so it says the entire tributary to the East Fork Eklutna River above Eklutna Lake is good spawning habitat, and that's the longer of the two. Next slide. And a lot of the so that East Fork must, because it's clear, it must not be glacier fed, but this West Fork apparently glacier fed and turbid, but even the tributaries to that West Fork. A lot of them are groundwater fed, and the temperature is such that we have big Dolly Varden in them, and it's almost certain that they would sustain populations of spawning and rearing of coho and kings. Next slide. More West Fork tributary pictures. Dolly Varden char are abundant. Spawning king and silver salmon can be imagined. I'm kind of like imagining some char right in the middle of that picture on the lower right. It kind of looks almost like them. But we've done these habitat assessments and spent years and still another year to go. Whereas the utility contractors try to tell us that it's not good habitat, but it is. Next slide. Okay, there's just some maps of our assessments. So MVE study estimates over 20 miles of salmon habitat in the lake tributaries system. So, and then, if you add up all the lake habitat that could be restored by fish passage, plus with flow to the lower river, that would restore the multiple channels and the off-channel habitat. It's just an amazing amount. We still have to work up exact numbers, but probably something like 40 miles of habitat would be restored with fish passage and adequate flow. So that's about what I have to say. So let's look at the questions. Right?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll read the question.
Okay.
There's a question here. The first one says, do the fish want to make it all the way back to the lake or just get further upstream to spawn?
They want to make it. I don't know that I could interview them, but like Eric says, they're already starting to go up the river, and if passage and flow were restored, they would almost certainly go all the way back up into the lake and above it to the tributaries. All right, total distance.
Great. The next, what is the total distance of the Eklutna River from lake to the mouth?
Do you have that off the top of your head, Eric?
I mean, not fully off the top of my head. I think it would be around 12.5 miles or something along those lines. Because 8.5 miles from the lower dam site where it was removed up into the dam, and then 4 or so miles down to the inlets. My guess there.
That's correct in my estimation as well. Great.
Next question says AWWU uses 10%, MEA uses 90%. The snow field is dropping. Maybe AWWU should have at least a long-term interest in replacing the hydropower with other sources.
Yeah, for sure. And not to mention, the utilities, they want to release the water from the AWWU pipe. By the way, that's Anchorage wastewater utility, I think, and they want to release it from their pipe down, a mile below the dam. But the AWW doesn't like that idea. That they think it could put their pipe in jeopardy, and not only that, but AWU has to close the pipe for maintenance or something, periodically, once a year. I think they close it. And so what are the salmon fry or juveniles that are in upper lower river gonna do when they shut down the flow? I don't. Or
Yeah, that's an important point, Mark.
yeah, they really stabbed us in the back after we went through 2 years of you know, considering all their studies and stuff, and all these entities put in their preferred alternatives for flow, and we had different options for replacing the dam, putting fish passage at the existing dam, and the utilities just went with, oh, we're going to choose the lowest flow of all the options with no fish passage, and we're like, what? So now we're proposing remove the dam, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, great. Next question says, was conversion of the Eklutna hydro project to pumped hydro considered as a mitigation alternative? This would return 90% of the water to the lake for fish and allow integration of wind energy to the grid, as well as expansion of generation capacity with minimal drain of the water resource.
Oh yeah, we considered pumped hydro, but the utilities wanted nothing to do with it. That would allow free flowing of the river. The water used for electricity generation could just be recycled, but they didn't seriously consider it.
Okay, next question says, is there a reason they can't just put more water in the Eklutna River?
From where?
From the lake.
Oh, well, yeah, because they want to use it all for power generation. They pipe it underneath the mountains to the left there, and haven't been letting any go down the river. They're required to mitigate for that, but they're taking minimal. They're proposing minimal mitigation, letting very little water flow down, so that they can use as much as possible for their power generation and profits.
Somebody else asked, Mark, can you talk about potential benefits to beluga to restore fish to the river?
Well, sure, more fish means better, more prey resource for belugas, and that's one thing that, I mean, we're doing little studies on belugas, and yeah, I mean, there's 300 belugas in the Cook Inlet population. They've been holding steady at that for many years now, probably 15 years, and just maybe declining ever so slightly. But they used to be, like when I first got into it, I was on this Cook Inlet Marine Mammal Council with the native hunters, and floated down the river and saw 1,200 at the mouth of the Big Susitna. That was probably the whole, what I called herd. All the pods probably got together there. And, Kinnick-Armid's a refugium really for them, where there are salmon, like around Eagle River Bay. There's no noise pollution because boats really don't go up there. Motorboats don't really go up there hardly at all. You only see a few per year, or when I've been out there. But yeah, they come up and they mill about off of Eklutna and across the what's called Fish Creek and Cottonwood Creek. So, if we restore fish runs in Eklutna River, they will come, and it will help them.
Where was the original Eklutna village? I heard that the village had to move when the dam was built.
No, it never had to move. Because of that. I think Eric pointed it out in one of his slides. It was at the very lower part of the river, to the right of the river. That there. How far is it from the river? About less than a mile from the river. And the pit houses, the old pit houses, were even closer to the river. I'd say, yeah, a quarter mile or something like that. Oh yeah, I'm not supposed to divulge that information.
And then the last question is, Eklutna Lake is a very popular place to recreate. Will diverting more water affect that in some way?
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good question, because I do think many people, their experience in the Eklutna watershed is recreating up at Eklutna Lake. And currently, it is a naturally occurring lake, and the project's operators treat it as a reservoir where they allow it to kind of overflow its natural bank, and then draw it down significantly low. And I mean, as someone who recreates out there, I think right now it has severe impacts to recreation. If you're going to launch a small personal watercraft on the lake, many times of the year, you have to drag it down that rocky shore because they have drained it down. If you are recreating on the lakeside trail, and I've had this happen, you're riding your mountain bike or something, or walking along the shore of the lake there, and then because they let the water get so high, it has been eroding those trails that the public uses. And I mean, a lot of times it's really hard to get around that. So changing the way the water would be used in which it can be made available for fish would likely alter the way in which it is so severely changed. And I think that really helps open up some potential, or just reduce those hurdles for recreational users. And then from a fishing aspect, there are resident fish in Eklutna Lake, but they have been kind of starved of marine nutrients. So getting some more of those marine nutrients in there, I think kind of will certainly help add a little bit more life into that system, which is also another way in which people can enjoy recreation. So in a lot of ways, I think the mitigation of the project can do a lot to benefit what is already a really great spot to recreate.
Well, obviously, if you restore a fishery that the public will be used at spots along the system, probably at the lake, that's going to be a big benefit for recreation. And the only thing we have to worry about is how to manage it. I mean, because both the Anchorage and Matsu populations are going to descend on it.
Yeah, I actually did a bike packing trip there this summer, and two people out of our group slid down the part that's eroded. It was super scary. And then someone just commented, "Awesome talk."
Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. Is there anything else that you guys want to share or put in the chat? I know you put down shared some links earlier. Did you put down the link to anything that you want people to sign, any petition letters?
Yeah, so two things. The first thing I shared was the website for the Eklutna River Restoration Coalition, which includes our action alert link to send your message to decision makers, and that's one thing we would love if people could do. And the second thing was a resolution from Native Village of Eklutna that shares more about the future they wish to see for the Eklutna River, which is worth taking a look at as well. And for everyone who joined, thanks so much for being with us. Yeah, I think I just like to add that this is an incredible opportunity before us to return a salmon stream to Upper Cook Inlet, and the sort of the opportunity before us can't be overstated as far as bringing life back to this river. And we're kind of at a low spot where the options on the table are about as bad as they could be, but we're going to do everything we can to ensure a fish-filled future for the Eklutna River, and are hoping you will join us along the way. Mark, I don't know if anything else to add.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and I really hope that your Susitna River doesn't suffer some of the same devastation as Eklutna has. We'll try to help where we can.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and for all your hard work on this. Yeah, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people have asked why we were focusing on the Eklutna River, because it's not in the Upper Sioux Valley, but I think some people don't realize that MEA gets power from the Eklutna Dam and hydropower. So it's really important to vote in MEA board elections and pay attention to that, and make sure that you can vote in someone that you can trust and is responsible. And I love the new video that came out, that came out a couple weeks ago. And I thought the quote by the person who says, how can you be anti-river, anti-people, anti-community, is like a great message to the utilities. And thanks for making that video and putting it out.
Thank you for sharing it.
And somebody asked if we could send the links to all the links in an email, and I'm happy to do that. So I'll be in touch if I can't find some of the links.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
great night.
Bye.